Hello and welcome to my little insemination suite where I carry out some instrumental insemination of honeybees during the summer months. What I really want to do by this video is to just give you some idea of the level of competence you need to achieve all the things that come together to enable you to inseminate queens. What I want to do is I want to run through the reasons why you might want to use it, outline briefly some of the equipment, and also kind of set the ground so that you know if it's for you or not. I have to be honest with you, I see a lot of people on forums talking about buying all the equipment and buying all the gear, and I know for a fact that many people buy it and they end up not even using it or starting the process and then realizing that it's really a huge undertaking to arrive at the end with inseminated queens in nucleus colonies or mini mating nukes that have been through the process and are successfully crossed by the process. In other words, they've mated in your device, you put them back in the colonies, and they are now laying away with the genetics that you chose to inseminate them with. So I think the best way to start is by first we're having a little look at the kit that we have, okay? And I'm going to try and build it up and just give you an overview of what you need so it gives you some idea. This isn't a definitive list, and it's obviously very variable because you can choose your own stuff. But I've gone for the Schley equipment because it's well renowned to be kind of the commercial standard. It's beautifully engineered. It helps avoid jolts and bumps, and it's smooth in its movements, okay? It costs more, but it's a lovely piece of kit. I've got the number 2 version, which has got heavier feet, so it basically holds itself down to the table nicely and doesn't move around, okay? I've also bought the Schley Harbo syringe, which assists me greatly because it's exactly right the height for my hand control when whether I'm either extracting drone semen or whether I'm inseminating queens later on after that process. If you wanted to buy the standard syringe that just fits on top of your insemination device, often when you buy a Schley kit or the equipment complete, it will have a syringe that is just the same as this one. That's your standard Schley syringe. Okay, that in turn sits on here. What the Harbo system does is basically move the syringe away and give you better hand control so that you can then just put your tip, you probably can't see, but there's your insemination tip there, and you can control that via this syringe further away. It just gives you that little bit more freedom in movement, and you're not quite so having to adjust it by the top of the device. But I don't really want to talk about that now. All I'm trying to do is outline the equipment. The microscope I got from Brunel Microscopes in the UK. I would be very careful when you ask for a microscope wherever you buy it that you are very specific. So go to someone who has one already. It's not the same lenses that do these lenses I have are the 10x20s. Okay, and it's a different microscope that you would use to do microscopy work if you were looking at, for example, nosema spores or things like that. And you can't generally use the same microscope to do insemination as you could do to do microscopy work because it doesn't allow the degree of magnification difference. You have one for one and one for the other. And that's what I found a little bit annoying because I was hoping to be able to use a microscope to do the two. Okay, to anaesthetize my queens that sit in here, in this little holding tube that you've probably seen me in one of my videos. She sits in this tube, which you've probably seen before, and her abdomen comes out there when she's in the tube. To anaesthetize her, you'll need some CO2, carbon dioxide. I actually use a soda stream. I bought this regulator online. It has a little bubbler. I'll probably be able to show you that. but I've got a little bubbler there that when I open this up, you'll see the bubbles coming out. There we go. It's on far too much at the moment. Just reduce that down. But I've just got this. I've just literally picked this equipment up. I haven't cleaned it. I've had it all packed away. I just got it out briefly to show you. But that's what I use for my CO2, because believe it or not, being in France, it's actually quite a performance to get hold of a big canister that's going to last me a couple of years. Whereas I have a spare CO2 up in the corner there. And I've got one here, and that will last me all I need for the season. And I can refill this for €8. I think it's really cheap. I just exchange the canister. So I've got my CO2, I've got my Schley device, I've got my microscope. This is the stand it sits on that came with microscope. So it's a little bit extra to stand. I did go and pay a lot for that. I've also got myself a set of scales that I use for weighing my queens. You'll need a good power block at the back, you can see there. And also, it's better if you get a light for your microscope. Now, you can get lights that are directional on two fiber optic lances that come out from. I prefer, after seeing this being used by professionals, I find this light that sits around the top of the microscope lens is absolutely brilliant. And it really does give you all the light you need, and it keeps everything out the way. You will also need spare insemination tips. You'll probably need a spare ventral hook. You'll need grease. You'll need a whole assortment and weaponry of syringes, tubes that obviously you'll learn all about when you do an insemination course, and that is key to it. Unless you're lucky like me, you had your own personal insemination teacher, which I'll tell you what, Alicia really was fantastic, and it took me a long time to pick up the process because there's so many bits to it. Unless you have someone like that who's going to help you out, it's really difficult otherwise to learn it in a 3-day course. Because one of the problems with insemination is it's the kind of thing you need to do regularly to completely familiarize yourself with all the kit. And just by me getting this out again tonight has made me realize how woolly I've gone from not using it for the last, well, it was last August since I used this, last July actually. Having this set of kit is a big investment, I admit, and for me, I believe it's good because it's brought me on in my beekeeping, and it's brought me up to a level that I needed to attain. Because to inseminate queens, you need to manipulate your drone colonies to produce good drones in a timely fashion. In other words, they've got to be ready. You've got to put drone comb in 40 days before you're ready to start inseminating, because otherwise you won't have drones ready to extract the drone semen. You've got to be completely proficient at producing good queens, and that's why I have the scales. You have got to have so much raw jelly on those cells so you can pick the best virgins to inseminate with. And you've got to hold those virgins once they hatch, because you've got to hold them for 5 days minimum so that the queens are mature enough to be inseminated. You cannot just take a virgin queen and inseminate her. She has to be mature. So you've got to find a way that suits you of holding those queens. You can do it in a bank, you can do it in nukes. So you've got to do that. And on the board in a minute, I'm going to run through a few things that will just outline the processes that you'll have to learn before you can start mastering insemination. Because what I'm trying to explain is it is not a simple, oh, there's a queen, I'll pick it up, inseminate it with some drone semen I've got the same day. Boom, Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt, all done. It is certainly nowhere near like that. You have to be completely organized. And the reality is with beekeeping is that most people either they raise queens or they might do honey. They might just inseminate queens and raise queens for mini nukes, okay? Or they might make nukes, or they might make honey, but they wouldn't do insemination. What I'm trying to say is instrumental insemination is really an occupation you would do if you have 2 people in the business, because the complexities of it mean that if you're a honey producer, if you're a nuke producer, or if you're a pollination contractor, whatever it is you do, to have the extra thing amongst all your other things in beekeeping makes life very, very difficult, because It pushes the boundaries of everything to get the queens ready, to get the drones ready, to get the nukes ready at the right time to have everything fall into place. So we're going to go to the board now, and I'm going to try and explain all of this brief overview so you can see what I'm talking about. As I say, what I'm trying to do with this board is just to give you some idea, kind of structure-wise, why you do what you do. And it just helps point out the obvious reasons that sometimes you can't see those reasons when you're thinking about, oh, I've got to go to instrumental insemination, I've got to be able to do that. This is going to help you make you realize why you don't really need to do that, okay? But, so you've got the two choices. You can do either II or you can do open mating. Now, obviously, really open mating and II, there's one, I like to call it one kind of middle thing where you can say you can have controlled open mating. In other words, you have an island mating station that only has the drones in and only has the virgins in that you want to put there. And that's something I don't have the luxury of. So that's probably one of the reasons why you might want to go for instrumental insemination, because not many people have the luxury of an island mating station. But for instance, if you buy it from breeders, for example, from the Marken Islands, or if you're lucky enough to know someone who's got a mating station that's pretty isolated, that'd be your best bet. Or you do go for insemination yourself. So you've got II, you've got open mating, but under open mating, we can just say, what do you do for that? You just use either nukes, or you do walk-away splits. They produce virgins, and then they go off and mate. And that obviously is with your original genetics. So that's there is original genetics. Or on the spot queen rearing, okay? Where you nick underneath cell and then the bees then raise a queen with what they've got. That is the same as walkaway splits, on the spot queen rearing. You're basically, or artificial swarming, or all those processes use the original genetics that are already in that nucleus box, okay? They have no other choice. When you do nukes and you do open mating, you can obviously graft from a selected colony, and then that then in turn gives you 50% of the genetics to the virgin that they will produce, because you give them the larvae that they are going to make the queen from. Okay, so I like to make nukes and I give them virgin queens. That I make, I put them in, and then they go off and open mate. But the difference between, as I just said, the difference between walkaway splits and on-the-spot queen rearing and making your own virgins is quite dramatic, okay? You really can do a lot of refinement by just raising the 50% side in your own daughters, okay, in the virgins. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is you can get a lot of success, and it's a lot less time consuming just raising virgins or doing walkaway splits as opposed to instrumental insemination. But now I want to talk a little bit about instrumental insemination and try and show you what that entails. So what do we need for instrumental insemination? We need, first of all, you need to get your drones in order. So you need to have drones for drone semen. Okay, so the golden, well, not the golden number, but the number we talk about is 40 days. And that's the time it takes if you put a frame of drone comb into your colony that you want to select drones from. That's the kind of time we say that it would take to the queen to normally lay into that comb, to then you to remove that comb and put it in another colony where you can get those drones finished and hatched, and they will mature in time enough for you to use them in the instrumental insemination process. Okay, so it's approximately 40 days. But how do you do that? How do you control those drones? Well, you can take that frame of drone brood and you can put it in a colony that is pretty isolated in your apiary, okay? That's one way. But you will get a bit of drift and you will get some other drones coming to that colony. Another way is to close off the colony and screen off the top, where you have basically a box of 10 frames at the bottom and 10 frames at the top, and in the middle you can put a queen excluder. And that queen excluder also works as a barrier, so the drones can't go down and out. They then will, what you do on top of that is you add a flight chamber. So the drones will go out the hole in the top that you put in, the little corner. I'll show you a picture now. This is one I saw being used in Hawaii. Absolutely fantastic. So come midday, when the drones want to fly, they go out the top box from the corner and they are all buzz around in the top. And those are the complete isolated drones. It's what we call a flight cage, and it means that you can completely control and allow the drones that are in that top section to be managed, to be healthy, to be strong, to be well fed, because underneath you've got plenty of nurse bees that come from the bottom to the top and move through the colony. They clean the poop up from the drones that are there. And what you end up with is very strong, healthy, well-fed drones, which is what you want. And they're mature. They're ready to have their semen extracted, okay? So you get your drone semen from your drones that are 40 days old or a little bit more. Sometimes they can be mature a little bit early or a little bit later. So you probably get about 10 days either side of their life when they're ready. And then you basically go and collect your drones. Now, collecting drones is one thing. Drones are very peculiar characters. They don't store well. You have to basically keep them warm if you want to have, say you've got an apiary that is pretty isolated and you use that to raise your drones, and you know you can go and collect them and it's half an hour away. That's really pushing it, because what you need if your drones are more than half an hour away from collection area is you need a special cage that will keep the drones warm, because they need nurse bees to keep them alive, okay? Drones don't do anything in the colony apart from kind of use resources. They don't really even feed themselves. They need constantly to be looked after by lots of nurse bees. And when you have a drone colony, you've got to stock that colony with extra nurse bees so that the drones are well fed, okay? So that's one way, is collection and keep warm. Okay, I think I've shown you this before. This is a drone collection cage. These are actually made to fit in your Langstroth mediums. They will fit in there perfectly. You can get 3 across and they even clip together. These are actually printed out by Jason Bragg, New River Honeybees. They're absolutely brilliant, but they still fit on top of my colony, so I love these as well. The nurse bees can go in and out of these grooves, but the drones can't get out. And they've got a really nice flip lid on it. So when you're collecting drones, like that, you can just flip the lid open and close and use one hand to collect and pop them in and close. Another hand, pop them in. So you end up with your drones. And that's what I would use if I was collecting drones from a colony that was nearby to where I was going to extract the drone semen from. Because if you can walk up the garden from where your drones are, like I do here, and you can extract them straight away, you open this cage inside your flight cage, so it all kind of works. Then you've got enough time, you've got about half an hour of each batch where most of them will stay alive, because they need to be alive when you extract the drone semen. And that's another thing you need to do, is learn how to extract drone semen. It's all about practice, okay? So let's leave the drones for now, and let's talk about virgin queens. You need to have virgins that are 5 days old minimum, okay? And that 5 days enables the queen's sexual reproductive organs to become mature enough to receive the sperm that you give them. Okay, so what I do here is as you know, I raise queens, but then I bank them. Okay, the system I use is banking. So you can either bank them, or you can get them hatched into nukes. Or mini nukes. So you have these two choices. The reason why you have the two, okay, banking or mini nukes, some people like to hatch their queens directly into the nuke that they're going to stay in once they're inseminated. And that has benefits. It means that the queen will probably be more readily accepted, and there's a box waiting for her, and they know her pheromone when she's returned to the box after the insemination process. But the problem with that is, as soon as you hatch a queen into that nuke box, you have to screen off the front with some queen excluder, because as soon as the queen is mature enough to start flying, she will be off and out and start flying. And the whole idea of instrumental insemination is controlling the mating, and you do not want a queen to take a flight, okay? So banking queens is actually quite attractive, okay, because you get to assess the queens a little bit when you put them into the little cages. Now there's different ways of banking as well, but basically in most people's queen banks is a very strong nurse bee colony that has that most of the time I prefer has no laying queen in it. Because if you have one with a laying queen, I find generally that the workers that are in that colony are less sympathetic to the virgin queens. Whereas if you have it queenless, I do find that there is less mortality amongst the virgins that are stocked. I also have learned that if I add 3 or 4 very young nurse bees to each cage when I bank my queens, that I find they live a lot better and they're a lot stronger, because there's more interaction between the nurse bees on the outside of the cage and the nurse bees on the inside. If you have just queens in a single cage, it can take a bit of the queen's got to almost beg to be fed. Whereas if you have nurse bees on the inside of that little nurse cage, the nurse bees that are in it are more likely to get food from the outside, because they're kind of mates and already they're right next to the queen, so she's looked after better. That's my theory. I don't know whether it's that, but that's what I find works for me. So I tend to bank mine in a strong colony that I have to add frames of nurse bees to. And you've got to watch the varroa, because you're adding brood to another colony, so you've got to watch the varroa. But it's a really good way for me. And this is why I only inseminate mid to early season, because I've got such prolific colonies, then I don't miss the brood so much. And you can be more picky in what you take out. But, so you bank your queens, you hatch them into nukes. What you do of the two is your choice, okay? So when would you ideally extract your drone semen? Well, what we tend to do, and what's kind of is deemed to be acceptable, is if you can extract drone semen in the morning and inseminate in the afternoon, that's kind of what's a really good idea. But what you'll find is, when I first started, it actually took a lot longer to extract drone semen, and enough drone semen so I could inseminate 4 or 5 bees the following day, because you just have to have lots of practice. But you can store drone semen at home at room temperature for about 2 weeks at a push, okay? Just keep them out of the light, keep them in a coolish place. 10, 12, 15 degrees is ideal. So you can extract the drone semen a few days before you're ready to inseminate. So if you're a bit unsure as to how long it's going to take, and if you're a bit unsure as to whether the drones, if you haven't got the skill, yes, you can do that. You can take your time, and then at least you might get a few done, okay? Because by the time you've extracted the drone semen, your queens will be maturing, and then hopefully at that time you're ready, you have some queens to use as well. So you've got to have basically drones and virgins timed to arrive at the same time or very near. And that is the problem with instrumental insemination. And once you've inseminated them on one day, you have to, most of the time, you have to remove them from this colony or the bank where they're held, okay? And you have to give them a second CO2. And the reason for that is the second treatment after your first one on the insemination day helps the passage of drone semen, it helps it mature to the spermatheca in the queen. Okay, and after you've done that second CS2, she might start laying on day 3, day 4, day 5. Okay, and then here's the end result: your queen is laying. Okay, so this is a real hodgepodge of a map. I'm just trying to go through things and prompt myself, but with open mating, it's pretty straightforward. You can get good results. You can still control the drones a little bit in open mating because you can enhance the drones in your best colonies and move your worst colonies away. Simple culling of rubbish queens, and you can get some good open mating with very little work. Yes, you still have to raise your queens if you want to make your nukes with virgin queens. But even if you just do walkaway splits, you can still get good open mating after doing some basic culling and moving stocks away, the bad stocks away. And that is one way. So the open mating can be really good. But if you want to do instrumental insemination, this is just a very brief snapshot of what you need. You need the drones, you need the virgin queens, you need everything timed right. And I can tell you now that it is not easy. Because if you're, as I said before, most people either do nukes. Let's just draw a line around this. Okay, most people do nukes, or they do honey, or they do queens, but very few do more than 2. Okay, some people do all 3 because they do nukes and they raise queens to go in those nukes, and they have a honey crop at the same time, for example, you know. But to add the II to that list, it adds a huge burden on that producer to deviate and lose and to come away from raising queens, raising nukes, and getting your honey supers on and processing the honey just to produce a few II queens. And this II or open mating in a mating station, in a controlled mating station, those 2 things to me make it all worthwhile to buy in breeder queens. Because if you buy in breeder queens, you're doing the work that someone else has done already. And you're taking those specific genetics right into your apiary, which if you tried to do, would take you years of breeding and would be virtually impossible. So you can kind of see now that just by buying in some really good breeder queens at the start of your beekeeping career, the benefits are unmeasurable. And the amount you're going to pay for an inseminated queen, or you're going to pay for a island mated queen, is not even in proportion to what the actual value is. It's worth far more than that if you know what you're doing. But I just wanted to do a video to try and explain how much work it is to instrumental inseminate successfully without you wasting your time. Because to do it properly, you can only do it well. And to do it halfway is going to waste all your time. It's going to waste all your money. You really, really are pushing everything when you do it. So I'm not being a killjoy. I'm not trying to stop you have a go. What I've outlined here is just touch the surface. In reality, in the field, you trying to learn how to deal with each problem of catching drones, of raising queens, becomes to another level if you've never done it before. So before you even begin to think about instrumental insemination, you've got to be a completely competent queen rearer. There's no 2 ways about it. If you can't raise good queens in volume and you haven't got the resources to do it, don't even bother. Just do not even go there. I've been honest with you. I just wanted to get this across that I've struggled with this. I feel confident about doing it again because I raise queens for nukes, I raise all that, and I kind of feel I've got the ability to do it, but it absolutely pushes you to the limit. So just to round up, I hope you enjoyed this video. I wanted to be honest with you. I wanted to just open your eyes a bit to the degree of equipment and material and skill you need to achieve instrumental insemination successfully. Okay? It's a lot of investment. I just want you to enjoy your beekeeping, and I think most people will get far more out of doing open mating and just basic control of their stocks than they will do with struggling with instrumental insemination. So, I hope you enjoyed that. Instrumental insemination is basically carried out by groups of people who are really, really interested in controlling the mating of bees and of honeybees, because they're trying to produce a definitive line. For example, Arista Bee Research, the USDA in America, Project APIS. There's other groups all around the world that use it, but it's a really good tool to use for specific things. But to be honest, if you just want to get good, strong queens, the best thing you can do is, to be honest, is just open mate and just control the stocks like that. And that's what I advise you to do. You will get much, much better results by doing your own thing in terms of the workload on you. Anyway, that's all for now. Take care. Bye for now.